Dr. Pieczenik.
Well, it's been a great honor and a pleasure, but the truth of the matter is we do owe it to you, Alex, and I certainly owe it to the American public that's been listening to the alternative media since, God knows when, 2001, and you all have done a phenomenal job. It's not about me and it's not about Alex. It's about a lot more people, and believe it or not, it's the people within the intelligence community and the military. I can't tell you how many times I'm stopped by individuals who recognize my voice, not necessarily my name, who work within the system and are grateful for what we have done, because the civilians who were involved, Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, Steve Hadley, Hillary Clinton, the Wolfowitzes, the neocon Jews, Israel, Dubai, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, will all be implicated in what's happened in 9/11. But what eventually arose from all of this were several factors. One was the emergence of a very unique individual who no one could have predicted. I did not predict that a Trump would arise at a moment when our history required a self-made American entrepreneur, an American-made entrepreneur, not somebody who depended on the kindness of strangers, but somebody who was able to take whatever assets he had and built it into a fortune, which he then dedicated to creating something better for others, namely America. He doesn't need the power. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the accolades of any of these Republicans. That's why we are now in the crux of the revolution. As Alex has said, you have all deserved this moment, but we can't stop, because the Republican Party has now become the face of the enemy. The Priebus's, the Mitt Romneys, the Jeb Bushes, the Neil Bushes, the Marvin Bushes, the Paul Singers, the Ricketts family, the Hubbard family, all those families who never served our country, but who were able to take and extract our slave labor and our monies in order to aggrandize their fortunes. Now, the irony is many of these companies, particularly the Koch brothers, his father made his fortune, not in America, but under Stalin. So I usually call the Koch brothers, who graduated where I did at MIT, the red babies, because the real fortunes were not made in the American oil fields. They were made under Stalin in the Soviet oil fields, and they're ashamed to talk about that because they're the diaper babies. Unlike us right now, we're in the midst of a revolution where Trump is the spear and the cutting edge to cut into what's called the rules of the party. The rules of the Republican Party are no more rules than fictitious rules that we have in any other institution of fascism. I saw those rules in the Soviet Union, and the more rules they imposed on me when I worked in the Soviet Union, the easier it was for me and others in the intelligence community to take the Soviet Union apart. So the Credentials Committee that's run by men like Sununu, who worked with George Bush Sr. and were also able to alter the election machines because they were MIT software engineers, and who were also corrupt in New Hampshire as a governor. These men are trying to reinstate their political legitimacy in a time when a man like Trump, who is backed by the American people, independents, Democrats, Republicans, is saying enough is enough. The will of the people has to be expressed by one man, one vote, not one delegate and no votes.
Dr. Pieczenik, I want you to have the floor pretty much for the whole hour. I did my long 10-minute intro, don't we? And I mean, how many people in the ruling establishment know what really happened? Where do you expect this to go? In a few minutes on, from your best intel, exactly what happened on 9/11.
What actually happened on 9/11, even before 9/11, I wasn't just a whistleblower. I was literally the opposition that existed within the group who helped Bush Jr. get into power. One of the conditions, I said, is that there should be no acts against this country. And I could smell it because Bush, who's pretty dumb, and so is his entourage, was talking about peace overseas, yet the people he put in were neocons who had never served our country, who already were creating the American initiative in the Middle East, people like Zalmay Khalilzad, Paul Wolfowitz, and others. So within a year before the time when he came to power, as I was asked to come into the Pentagon, to the Office of Low-Intensity Conflict, I began to see the CIA civilians totally take over the Pentagon. It was an amazing feat. And I went to one of the senior officials who was a civilian, as well as another general, and said, you are now being infiltrated by the CIA. You are going to be involved in some kind of dirty trick, which I suspect will be a stand down and a false flag.
I could see the pre-programming, just to interrupt. They were on the news going, we're going to be attacked. When we're attacked, we're going to take your rights. I saw the Hart-Rubin Commission a year before say that. I saw the PNAC document about a Pearl Harbor event so they could take over. I mean, you saw the telegraphing, but from the inside. Please continue.
So it was clear to me who would be involved. It would be Paul Wolfowitz. It would be Walter Yako. It would be Zalman Khalilzad. All of these people whom I'd worked with, Richard Pearl, Dov Zugheim, who's a rabbi I didn't know but I didn't like, Elliot Abrams, who I almost killed in another iteration. He knew I was going after him on the Panama thing. And when it occurred, I knew immediately that this was a stand-down false flag, because Israeli operatives immediately called me up and said the planes had attacked the towers and they were collapsing. And I said, there is no precedence in the history of any building where a plane has crashed and collapsed the building. And immediately they said, within minutes of the time, I said, this is a false flag. Oh, you must be an Arabist. And I said, now I know who's involved. So it was Israel. I knew the Pakistani senior intelligence officer was coming here because I was forewarned by one of his predecessors, Yaqub Khan, that the Pakistani generals were involved in a potential coup. I was forewarned that the Saudis would be involved. I knew that the Israelis would be involved because they had people like Michael Chertoff, who should have been indicted because he has double citizenship here and in Israel, and was in charge of Homeland Security along with Richard Pearl and others whose loyalty have never been to the United States. Unfortunately, these are American Jews whose loyalty is to Israel, have never served the American government, never been in the American military, but are more than happy to serve the Israeli military, as Zav Daigheim has done, as Rami Emanuel, and that
Steve
whole
Pieczenik,
family, both on the Republican and Democratic side.
Sure.
So,
Steve Pieczenik, we got to go to break. StevePieczenik.com. Folks, you're hearing it from somebody inside the system. He's going to tell you, okay, and just let the chips fall where they may, because it's all going to come out anyways. Just get ready. Stay with us. Now,
well, let me just go on to say, a lot of what's happened is that our internal military system, our internal intelligence, those in the White House and other places have been very effective in political warfare, economic warfare, in turning the entire geopolitical area away from Saudi Arabia, which was our major creator of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and all the Sunni terrorist groups at the inspiration of the CIA. However, there are elements of the CIA that fought it. No institution that we have is monolithic. No institution is all bad or all great. Within our intelligence system, and I've worked extensively, I have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And very often I'm working against my own people with other sorts of people. So I've had generals, and I won't name who they are, who worked with me in order to explain to people like Rumsfeld that if you continue to remain here and sacrifice 75,000 of our soldiers in a war that was from the very beginning poorly planned out, it had no success capability and was planned out by neocons like Wolfowitz and others who had no experience in war, we will overthrow you. When that happened, on that day, I was informed by Jeb Bush and his people that I was brought up on charges of treason. I won't tell you which generals worked with me. But had it not been for those generals and the people within the core of our military and our intelligence community, you would not have gotten rid of Rumsfeld, a disastrous individual.
This is too sensational. I may have to go into the next hour, because, sir, just so people understand, I remember over the years you hinting at this, you getting at it, and then what you said 4 years ago, and then it came out that Dempsey did go and say we're not going to bomb Syria. There's basically been a counter coup The media hasn't reported it, and then finally Cy Hirsch did. This is so epic. That's what I'm saying. You've got all the secrets. They're dangerous for you to know.
That's why I want to say to you, the generals that I can talk about are generals like Jerry Boykin, Special Forces, General Schumacher, head of Special Forces. These weren't men who worked against our government. They're the men and heroes who worked with the American people. Keith Alexander. I mean, there's a whole group of them. Even David Petraeus, when we put him into the CIA to control it. All these men, Michael Flynn, all these men were dedicated to the American people, knowing fully well that we could no longer have civilians who had no military experience, had no war experience, despite whatever they were in background, religion, it really didn't matter. What mattered was that they wanted to go to war without the notion that our military was not willing or capable of fighting a war that was limited in size, 75,000, as opposed to what Shinseki had ordered, 250,000, and our military was overturned by incompetent civilians. That changed. And that
but since then, they've had a major culling of the generals. So what's the real battle space now?
The culling of the generals is we've had now, that's going to continue until we get to the captain and the 04 level, 05 level.
So you're saying that's actually a good thing?
No, well, I think some of it is good and some of it is bad. Many people have argued against General Dempsey. I don't think Martin Dempsey, has gotten his full reward for what he really did. He stopped our involvement in Syria. It would have been catastrophic had we gotten into a civil war in Syria.
He took the bold move to start giving the Russians intelligence outside of the neocons and the CIA trying to run an al-Qaeda takeover. I mean, do people get that? I mean, that is so epic. American military said, we're not going to do this, and quietly joined with Russia to stop the head choppers. That's so epic.
That's exactly correct. At the same time, we had a man whom I didn't know, a Jewish guy named Dan Cohen, who's deputy director of the CIA and the Treasury, to effect an amazing economic warfare against Iran over a period of 5 to 7 years, and literally take down Iran with our economic weapons, forcing their currency to drop, forcing their bonds to be junk bond, and putting them into bankruptcy. So this is not about Jew or a Christian or Muslim. There were no Muslims involved in 9/11. The ones who were involved in 9/11 who were Muslims were the countries like Turkey, Pakistan, Dubai, Qatar, and the Bush family who worked for the Dubai security companies. The actual Muslims weren't even on the plane. There was no such thing. So what happened in effect is the whole Bush family, the entourage of what you're seeing now in the Republican Party, created this 9/11 so we could have the war machinery go into effect without the consensus of our military, without the agreement of our intelligence community, without the support of the American people. That was an act of treason.
Have you seen the video where our reporters talked to Jeb Bush about the 28 pages twice, and he actually has an adrenaline rush and looks like he's seen a ghost, and it looks totally scared?
Yeah, but Jeb Bush is an idiot. He's a coward and he's an idiot. And it came out very clearly. He didn't know what he was talking about. He had no idea what he was talking about in terms of the Iraq war. He was involved in 9/11. The man was a disaster as a governor. He brought me up to basically try to impress me that he had an intellectual forte when he had none. The truth of the matter is the entire Bush family has been a great criminal enterprise. They've sent their kids to Andover, where I have had family there, and then went on to Yale. They are a disaster, as the Clintons are. But the beauty of what the American public has done, and your audience has done, is, number one, the Panama Papers. Trust me, it is our intelligence community that released thousands, millions, 11.5 million pieces of paper. That did not come from an entourage of 100 different media groups. It did not come from 140 countries. It came from an intelligence community that responded to the will of the American people to say, okay, now we're going to start cleaning out the entire world system that has the neocon agenda, that has the transnationalism elements. Let's do it by one thing, showing the corruption that goes through Panama. Even when I worked in Panama and trying to take out Noriega, I never suspected that there were greater criminals than Noriega. For me, Noriega was pretty honest relative to everybody else. Although he was a bad guy in certain ways, he was pretty straightforward. But the point of fact is the American people has compelled our intelligence community to release that. Secondly, they have compelled James Comey of the FBI, Loretta Lynch of the Attorney General, and this administration to investigate the Clinton Foundation and the email scandals to the point where she may well be indicted. If she is indicted, that is the culmination of everything the American people have wanted.
I was about to say, isn't the 9/11 info coming out like the string on the sweater?
That was a very important part of all of this.
And now Hillary, I mean, so I'm right in saying we're seeing a slow motion collapse of the nastiest parts of the establishment.
Yes, correct, Alex. You're absolutely. We are all witnessing the collapse of what happened 9/11, but it did not happen just out of the blue. It happened because we had loyal military individuals, we had loyal intelligence officials, we had 16 different units of our intelligence community that really worked together, and we had people within the executive branch and the legislative branch, including senators, who were brave enough to say, we've had enough.
That's right. They're the heroes. They're the heroes, folks, and they were all there leaking the info the entire time. Who said they wouldn't do something like that and speak out? No, they did speak out. Coming up, we got a sneak peek with an interview that Billy Corgan taped with Leanne McAdoo about what is the state of the establishment. I know they're scared. I know a lot of them are leaving the country right now, which shows they think something really big is about to come out. Bill Clinton said something political so big globally is about to come out, it'll almost split the planet. He said that's why Hillary's needed. They're all telegraphing huge stuff's coming from your intel, your sources, but also your trained eye. What else big is about to happen that you think people should be made aware of?
The most important thing that should happen and will happen is Trump overriding the Republican Party restrictions in terms of voting and representation. The American people have to continue to insist one vote, one person, not a delegate, not some quorum, not some caucus. The party can no longer exist. The party is not relevant to the existence of our republic. The Republican Party is dead for all practical purposes. So is the Democratic Party. Those of you who believe in what the Republicans stood for really should insist now that Trump be the front runner without any more qualifications or restraint. And those of you who believe that Bernie Sanders should represent the Democratic Party, then do so. But the reality is Hillary Clinton should be indicted. The two major aspects that will come forth on the Republic will be the indictment of Hillary Clinton for crimes against the state and national security, and the crowning of Trump to come forth. If that does not happen on either case, you will have what we call a political revolution. Whether it's an agitation in the streets, I don't think so. Whether it will be an outcry from the American public through social media, I suspect that will happen.
All right, Dr. Pieczenik, we've only got 5 more minutes left with you. Dr. Pieczenik, what do you think of the political correctness? I think that's their only weapon, is just getting us all to infight with each other. I think that's backfiring. What's your view on that?
Well, I think it's backfiring. I think that, you have to be sensitive to differences in cultural variations, but it doesn't mean you overstep your bounds, and it means you don't spend a lot of time on that issue. America should be proud of the fact that we've had, number one, we have an African-American president. Number two, we have women on, the Supreme Court. Number three, we've really advanced quite a lot. And, advancement takes some amount of push and pushback, and that's part of our revolution. We have always been in constant motion, and we always will be in constant motion. But the key right now is to focus in on the fact that the American will has to be represented by a president who represents the American will and not the American political correctness. That has to be determined by Trump, Hillary, or whoever they want to put up there if Hillary's indicted. That's their problem. The key issue now is that we have massive amounts of corruption that's occurred domestically, internationally. It's been exposed by our own internal intelligence system. We have a republic that will continue to go on, but unfortunately we're sending soldiers overseas without the permission of the American people. I know of a group of young men who are going now into the Horn of Africa. They're coming out of Florida, and the question is why? Why are we continuing to send our young men and women into harm's way when, in fact, we haven't declared a state of war, and we're not in a state of war? A war on terror does not exist.
Yeah, I know about some of those African operations that are going on too through the grapevine. I mean, they're doing, and they give them these wild cover stories to make the special ops people think that it's for a greater good, but it's very limited. They like have the intro mission, that's the cover mission, and then the rest of the mission. Aren't the soldiers, I think they are, smart enough to figure that out?
Well, most of them are highly trained. Many of them are masters in political science. Many of them are advanced politicians in our communities. Many of them are far superior in intelligence than you would have imagined. But nevertheless, they joined to serve our country. The issue at hand isn't the fact that they're serving our country. The issue at hand is where are we deploying our troops and why? And why isn't our president, whoever is in charge, explaining why we're deploying thousands of men into the Horn of Africa? And why are we still continuing in a 15-year war in Afghanistan that is certainly self-destructed? And why are we still in Iraq for the God knows how many times? So these are the issues that have to be quickly resolved. Trump has articulated the problem. Trump has said, look, we have to look at this in a serious way, and we need generals like Mike Flynn and others to address the issues of where we can and where we shouldn't be involved. I don't think we belong in the Horn of Africa. If we need the Horn of Africa, there are many mercenary companies that can go there instead of our own men and women. And I think we have to reconsider where our deployments are occurring and what we need them for.
All right, Dr. Pieczenik, I know you're a busy guy, but I said this a few months ago when you were on. Will you come on soon and talk about your new book?
No problem. It's always a pleasure to be on, and God bless your people, and thank you all for everything you've done for this country, all of you.
Dr. Pieczenik, does it feel good?
I look forward to see it.
Absolutely. I mean, just in 10 seconds. How good does it feel, though, seeing 9/11 Truth come out? I mean, that's got to feel good.
Well, it feels wonderful, but we still have a lot of work to do, and I think the American public should congratulate itself and also continue to fight. And thanks to all of you for a wonderful, wonderful
Absolutely.
effort.
Thank you, Dr. Pieczenik.
Get BrainForce at 25% off for a limited time at InfoWarsLife.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of BrainForce.
One of the worst things with most energy products is it's not sustainable, right? You're gonna crash afterwards. And the cool thing about this is it's not just a bunch of energy compounds that are gonna fire your brain up to a higher RPM or whatever, which it does do. This is sustainable. This isn't going to spike and you're gonna collapse and you're gonna feel really bad afterwards. This has a bunch of different antioxidants and compounds and polyphenols.
Everybody's on these drugs to knock their brain out because the brain's so fried.
We're looking at the television screen for research purposes or whatever we're even doing, trying to learn something, or staring at the computer all day, working, doing good. You're still damaging your brain.
You will find BrainForce and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
Get BrainForce at 25% off for a limited time at InfoWarsLife.com. And we thank you for your support.